Medicare is a vital source of health insurance for older adults, but figuring it out can be overwhelming. You're not alone. Every year, millions of Americans struggle to understand the different parts, enrollment deadlines, and coverage options. If you're facing nursing home costs or planning for long-term care, Medicaid might be the better place to start. Click the link in the top right to watch that video. But if you're here to get a handle on Medicare, what it actually covers, then you're in the right place. I'm Shana Siegel, an elder law attorney with over 30 years of experience helping families plan for aging, healthcare, and long-term needs. In today's video, I'll explain the basics of Medicare, what the different parts mean, how much they cost, and how to make smart choices about coverage as you or your loved ones turn 65. So in today's episode, we're going to talk about understanding Medicare, coverage, costs, and how to choose the right plan. So first, what is Medicare? Medicare is a federal health insurance for people 65 and over, and also individuals with disability. It covers hospital, medical, and prescription drug benefits. And as I said, it's got 4 parts, and we're going to talk about each of them: A, B, C, and D. Part A is hospital insurance. Part B is medical or physician insurance. Part C is Medicare Advantage, and Part D is prescription benefits. We'll dive into all of them. It's important to know that Medicare we think of as a program for seniors, but it's also for individuals with disability. Certain individuals can qualify if they're on Social Security disability benefits for 2 years, or sometimes even sooner. Many people are confused by all the different parts and which ones they're eligible for and which ones they should have. So let's dive into it. Part A, hospital insurance. Part A covers not just hospital stays, but also some skilled nursing in limited situations, hospice benefits, and home health care. There's no premium for Part A as long as you qualify, which generally means that you've worked for 10 years. There are still deductibles and coinsurance that do apply. When we talk about Part A coverage, there is some coverage for skilled nursing homes. However, that coverage is quite limited. In order to qualify for even the limited benefit, which is generally for short-term rehab, think of if you've had a fall and maybe broken a hip, or after a knee replacement surgery, you might have coverage for a rehab stay. The one thing that people often don't realize is that in order to get the rehab stay covered under Medicare Part A, you have to have been in the hospital for 3 days immediately preceding that. And you actually have to have been admitted. There is a status called observation status that sometimes people are in the hospital, even staying overnight for multiple days, but they are never admitted. And I have multiple blog entries that address that topic, so you can take a look. Part B, medical insurance. So this Part B, covers things like your doctor's visits, your outpatient care. It covers durable medical equipment, a lot of the testing or preventive services that you might receive. There is a premium for Part B, and there is an income test. So some people pay a premium that is a little bit higher. Part B includes copays and deductibles. But it is a really important insurance because it covers so many things, so much of your doctor's visits and all of that. When you enroll in Medicare, generally at age 65, but could be older if you're working, you are going to enroll in Part B. It's important to do it at that time and not wait. Some people do choose to wait because they think, well, I'm healthy, I don't want to pay a premium. However, there is a penalty for late enrollment. That penalty is 10% per year, and it applies to your premium for the rest of your life. So that can really add up pretty quickly. So it's important to apply for Part B as soon as you lose your group coverage or as soon as you go on to Medicare. Part C, Medicare Advantage plans. And this would be like a replacement for A and B. Some individuals choose to stay with traditional Medicare, and others choose to enroll in an Advantage plan. An Advantage plan is offered by private insurers, and it can seem really attractive because the premiums are generally lower than having Part B plus potentially a Medigap policy. However, there are some important things to be aware of. While Medicare Advantage plans can often cover drugs and dental and vision and hearing, and sometimes things that regular Medicare may not cover as well, there are limitations. You must use specific providers. You must stay within the network of that plan. In addition, it can be really important to realize that if you enroll in an Advantage plan because you think, why not? I'm going to have that lower premium, and later you become ill, you may not be able to switch back to Part A and B because you may not qualify for a Medigap policy at that time. So it's really important to make an informed decision and speak with an expert about whether an Advantage plan is right for you. Another limitation with Advantage plans is that there can be limits in certain situations of an emergency or if you travel out of the area because of those provider networks. Also, if you end up in long-term care, the place that you might be interested in assisted living, they may not take that plan. So again, Medicare Advantage plans can be cheaper, but there are a lot of things that you need to be careful about. So lastly, we have Part D. That's the Medicare prescription drug coverage. Well, this is a really important benefit for many people as drug costs can get pretty high when you're taking multiple medications. You can purchase it as a standalone or as part of an Advantage plan, so it'd be incorporated into that Advantage plan. It's important when you're considering a Part D policy to look at what drugs are covered. Each plan is going to have their own formulary, and you want to make sure that your drugs are included, and you can figure out online what is going to be the cheapest plan that's available for you. I've had a number of situations where clients just continue on in the same Part D plan year after year, and then they will get a bill and find out that a new drug that they're on isn't covered as part of their plan. So it's really important to keep on track of this, take a look and make sure that if you add a drug that it's covered under your current plan, and if not, figure out what your options are for changing when there is the next open enrollment period. I want to dive a little bit deeper into this idea of whether or not you should stick with traditional Medicare or an Advantage plan. With traditional Medicare, you have full flexibility. You can see whatever provider you want as long as they accept Medicare. So that's really helpful. And generally then you're going to have separate Part D coverage for prescriptions. Some people like the Advantage plan because it's all bundled, right? It includes your prescription along with your doctor and your inpatient. However, again, there are a lot of limitations. You have to stick to the providers that are within your network, which not everybody is such a big fan of. You can switch from an Advantage to traditional Medicare. However, if you do that after 1 year, more than after your first year of being in a Medicare Advantage plan, then you have a problem with the underwriting for the Medicare supplement. If you want to add a Medicare supplement on to assist and help cover the copays and deductibles that traditional Medicare doesn't pay, then you may not be able to do so because of medical underwriting. In that first year, you're guaranteed, but after that, you're not. So you have to really be thoughtful about that decision about going with Medicare Advantage. And if you think it may be a problem for you, you may really want to consider switching back after that first year. So I've mentioned the idea of a Medigap or a supplemental policy. So a Medigap policy you use when you have traditional Medicare. You don't have a Medigap when you are with an Advantage plan. A Medigap policy is a private policy that you're going to purchase, run through private insurers, that is going to cover the copayments and deductibles that traditional Medicare doesn't pay. So for instance, if you have a hospitalization, Medicare is going to generally pay 80%, and then that Medigap policy is going to cover that other 20%, depending on which policy you choose. But kind of the standard policies, you're going to see that it's going to cover pretty much all of that 20%, as well as all of the deductibles that you're going to have. So it's a pretty good deal to enroll in Medigap policies, and there are a number of them offered, but they are standards. So you can compare any plan G, for instance, across the board. They're going to have pretty much the same coverage. And that's really helpful in kind of thinking about, well, which one do I choose? And again, as I said, a Medigap policy, they must offer it to you if you enroll when you first enroll with Medicare. There is no medical underwriting. It doesn't matter what illness you have or how sick you are. However, they can deny you later on, or they can charge very high premiums. And I've seen that with a lot of clients where they never got a Medigap policy, and then we're trying to add one later, and the cost is just astronomical, or they won't approve it. No company will accept the person. So it is something that if you're gonna do it, you really need to do it early on. Why you shouldn't do this alone? Well, I think all the conversation we've had previously kind of gives you a sense of that, right? This is pretty complex, and there are a lot of mistakes that I've seen people making, whether it's not realizing that they needed to purchase Plan B up front, or not realizing that they were not going to be able to get a Medigap and not therefore being able to switch between an Advantage plan or back to traditional Medicare. There's a lot of things that can happen. There's also a lot of questions that people have surrounding when they're working and on Medicare and how that can all impact it as well. So there's a lot of rules, and it's really important to work with somebody who understands all of these issues. There's also a lot of situations where people do have their Medicare all set up, but they do get a denial of coverage for whatever reason. And that can be a situation that an elder law attorney can help with to make sure that you're able to maximize your Medicare coverage and get all of the reimbursement that you're entitled to. One situation that clients come to me with often is when they have a hospitalization and then they end up in a skilled rehab, and Medicare is covering it for the first, let's say, 20 days. And clients assume, because it is up to 100-day benefit, that they're going to have coverage for 100 days. And then all of a sudden they get a note that says, no, you're going to be terminated after 15 days or 20 days. And they are really concerned. This is often because of a misunderstanding and a misapplication of the rules, where people believe that you must be improving in order to receive the rehab benefit. It actually is not correct, and there was actually a class action lawsuit that addressed this issue. It turns out that you must need medically the benefit. Whether we're talking about, generally we're talking about physical therapy or occupational therapy, and you must be getting some benefit from it. But that doesn't need to mean that you are improving, and that is where people get really confused. So I've had cases where the physical therapy was beneficial in that it kept the person from declining, and it kept them strong. And in that situation, you can still qualify under Medicare. So if you get one of those denials, it is really worth the time to have a conversation with an elder law attorney on whether or not it makes sense to go through the appeals process. There are a number of layers of appeals, and people are really have a hard time understanding the various levels and when it may be appropriate and when it's not appropriate to appeal. So that's a situation that would be worth a quick consult. If this video helped clarify Medicare for you, check out my other Aging Answers episodes for more practical insights. Have questions about your own coverage or something you've encountered with a family member? Leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. And if you'd like to work directly with me, you can reach me at 908-252-4253 or siegel@norris-law.com. That info is also in the description. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future videos on aging, elder law, and care planning.